first time. Let's see how this goes. And let me echo Mike's comments too. Thanks to Sangeeta and Maria for putting this together, bringing us all together, and for inviting me and asking me to talk about Market Power Europe, this thing that I've been talking about, and TTIP. And so I don't assume that many of you may have never heard of this thing called Market Power Europe. And so what I'm going to do is spend just a little time easing everybody into this conceptualization, so it's clear what I'm going on about. And then I want to introduce some initial thoughts about what Market Power Europe might tell us about the TTIP negotiations, right? So I think it's interesting. It's a great time to look at TTIP from a Market Power Europe perspective. And I think TTIP empirically will be able to give us some useful insights. So in terms of easing you into Market Power Europe, this is hopefully a contribution to these long-running, very rich debates about the EU as a power, right? And so this goes back to the 1970s with Francois Duchesne, right? Back in the 1970s, everybody's talking, is the EU even an actor? So we have these concepts of actorness developing, all these wonderful debates, right? But a lot of scholars were disagreeing, right, about what exactly the European Union is, because it's maybe this kind of newer sui generis actor. It's something strange and it's something fairly different from our standard conceptualizations of states, and that states matter in the international system. So this has led to a very contentious set of discussions or debates, as I put them, right? And the development of all these different types of conceptualizations. This is by no means an exhaustive list, right, of these EU as a power debates, right? These are just some of the maybe more prominent conceptualizations that have come up. Oslatoya writes about small power, there's gentle power, superpower, Moravcik says quiet superpower, middle power, Elizabeth Agastam who used to be here, right, does ethical power, risk-averse power, Zaki Laidi, et cetera, et cetera. I'll go through them all. Conflicted trade power, Calypso Nicolaitis and Sophie Mounier. Transformative power, there's a big research agenda now at Free University of Berlin on transform. There's even a German academic, Hubert Zimmermann, who has talked about the EU as a realist power. Right? This is fantastic, right? And so two of if these are prominent contributions, not extended or not exhaustive, two obviously of them, the most prominent are civilian power, with Duchesne kind of kicked all this off in 1972. And then, of course, by far and away the most famous Ian Manners contribution, Normative Power Europe, right, which really shifted the debates. It was a great contribution because it shifted the debates that were really kind of stuck in the mud between whether or not we should think of the EU as a civilian or a military power, right? So he's certainly advanced a lot of these discussions with this idea of Normative Power Europe. And so I'm not going to go into details about civilian power Europe and Normative power Europe. We can talk about that if you want to, and I'm sure many of you are probably even more familiar than I am with those conceptualizations. And what I want to say is when I talk about Market Power Europe as well, I'm not saying that I completely reject these ideas of civilian or normative power Europe, right? In fact, I've taught about these for a long time. This is why I got interested in it. I've always been fascinated by these types of debates and what the heck is the European Union, right? And so while civilian and normative bases of the EU as a power, I think, well, may exist, probably do exist, I think there may be another fundamental basis for the EU's identity. I think if you look historically and presently at a basis for the EU's identity, right? It started out with the European Coal and Steel Communities Treaty, right? Let's not rehash the whole history, right? But I think the EU always, from its earliest days, has been an experiment at market integration, a regional experiment at market integration, right? There's always been some economic orientation to it. Even if it might have been done for security building, right, confidence building, right, from the earliest days. And there were attempts at more military and security integration, but those ebbed and flowed, right? But consistently over time, it's always been this experiment. Even in the 1970s, when everybody talks about Eurosclerosis, right? It's always been this economic experiment, market integration, and in the present system, right? That's how all types of other actors on a daily basis interact with and experience the European Union, right? Is somehow related to what used to be first pillar policies, right? All of these policies, these regulations, directives, etc., that comprise what we know as the single European market today, right? And so what is that single European market? Well, it's a very large, regulated market. And so I submit to you that perhaps that's an important part of the EU's identity as a power. right? That is largely overlooked by all of these other conceptualizations that I have.